A red flag appeared early on, far from a catastrophic setback, not an error that could explode, only a few minor issues. Gradual heating, an unlucky season marked by bad harvests, endless misery, and postponements. No one on Parker Schnabel's squad was anticipating a bed of roses coming into this season, but not even he could have foreseen the perfect storm of challenges that would hit 4 months in. The once promising Dominion Creek claim is now a logistical nightmare, with long-haul routes, stressed equipment, and time as the constant enemy. The worst part is that the gold is still there, but it's underperforming, as if it were mocking the crew's efforts. Consistently poor, that is, and when your entire season is riding on extracting 1,000 ounces per week from stubborn ground, it's the kind of phrase that keeps you up at night. With each passing setback, Parker's original aim of 10,000 ounces by the conclusion of the season began to seem more like a pipe dream. He revised his target down to 8,000 ounces, which is still a lofty but perhaps achievable objective. I've had many conversations with my dad regarding loading trucks. For example, do you get greedy and overload them to their rated capacity, or do you stick to what they're capable of carrying? Obviously, the A60s have been a lifesaver. They can haul nearly twice as much as some of the other trucks. Parker didn't waste any time expanding the operation's horsepower. Instead, he introduced the A60s, 2 enormous rocks that could move 600 yardage of paid dirt per hour. These weren't your average mining vehicles. They were the type of machines that make heads turn, break records, and if pushed too hard, even break themselves. Parker's father urged him not to overburden the trucks, but he was relying solely on horsepower between his present pace and his desired goal, and there were no spare trucks or backup plan in case one failed. If they were going to claw their way to 1,000 ounces every week, Parker naturally prioritized efficiency over safety, speed over security, loading them past capacity, and pushing until something gave. Parker had decided to place his biggest bet here, with the Sulphur Creek wash plant closed, dirt piles depleted, and the crew too thin to restock. It wasn't just a strategic choice. It was their only option right now. The terrain was vast, rugged, and shrouded in potential on the map. It appeared to be the future on the ground. However, getting to the bottom of this riddle was no picnic. Everything was focused on Dominion at the downstream end of the long cut, where a sharp trench of pay dirt wound its way through the earth like a scar. At its head was the promise of ounces, but getting it moved was no easy task. The terrain was harsh and punishing the entire way, testing machines, men, and endurance. They had to work around the clock with no room for mistake and no time to regroup. At Dominion, a mining site transformed into a crucible where grit met gravity and every decision reverberated throughout the operation. James, a 22-year-old rookie brimming with ambition and adrenaline, climbed into the cockpit of a $500,000 rock truck and was tasked with transporting 60 tons of earth over terrain that devoured and spit out veterans. At first, he maintained pace, gained confidence, and made progress, but then the truck blinked and what began as a flicker on the dashboard became a deluge of error codes. Warning lights beeped. The taxi was abruptly engulfed in the frantic buzz of an extremely serious problem. There was no phone your supervisor checklist, and James froze. This was not a training simulation. The truck jolted, sputtered, and suddenly died. There was no forward or reverse motion. This was pure terror as a mechanical behemoth collapsed beneath him. "We have a problem. I think this truck just went down. That is not what we need right now. All we need is 60 tons of pay dirt sitting on a hillside inside an industrial behemoth that has lost its will to live. Hey, Mitch, do you have a copy?" There was serious damage to the brake lines on the A60 Parker, which resulted in its crown and lifeless shell. Mechanical breakdown. It was a chain reaction, with each brake causing another. Mechanics only speak about such failures in whispers. What's worse is that it occurred while the vehicle was fully loaded. James shook his head as he radioed in a trembling voice. Mitch, who had been juggling production demands like a juggler with an excess of chainsaws, responded with a heavy dose of frustration. It wasn't that James had done anything wrong. Everyone knew that. What this meant was that there were no backup trucks, no time, and no spare trucks. With the S60 blocked, production halted, the wash facility ran empty, and Parker's refusal to reassign trucks from other sites had always been about strategy. It wasn't just a truck, it was the lifeblood of the entire business. The team huddled around the damaged machine, their eyes fixed on the twisted metal that was leaking, while Peter's hunger became worse and the Dominion, which had been a worthwhile gamble, now like it was about to become a costly lesson. With each passing minute, the sound of the ticking clock grew louder as the fluid and earthate wheels ceased to revolve. The race was no longer against the clock, but against collapse, as in a mind as complicated as theirs, the effects of a single malfunction quickly and mercilessly propagate outward. At one point, tensions reached a boiling point and the crew became scrambled, the radio rang constantly and a mechanic's fury flashed. The failure wasn't merely mechanical, it was emotional as well. Everyone was exhausted, so I was furious with Mitch and told him to get a wrench if he wanted the vehicle fixed quickly. The lead mechanic, Taylor, stepped up to the plate with a singular objective: to safely unload the 60 tons of dirt and then bring the crippled monster back to life. The goal was to prevent the dirt from falling out at some point, but he quickly realized that this was easier said than done. With just one slip-up, the entire load could collapse, crushing anyone nearby. Caution became the new currency. With every bolt snugged and every hose double-checked, calculating perfection became an absolute necessity. It was a matter of survival. One of Parker's most powerful trucks lay motionless on the trail, 60 tons of paid dirt trapped inside like a coffin. He had to make a quick and poor decision because there were no reinforcements. After all, the gold wouldn't be moving if the dirt didn't move. Parker had to confront the icy math despite the appearance of the miracle truck over the ridge. One truck was unable to meet demand, resulting in the temporary shutdown of a wash plant. However, in this industry, a temporary shutdown feels like an eternity. The subsequent silence was deafening as machines that had been rumbling minutes earlier now sat idle, workers tending to other matters. While time slipped away and Dominion Creek stopped limping like a train stuck on a one-way track within, I peered at belts that no longer moved, and the worst thing was that the gold was still buried there, undisturbed and inaccessible. As the mechanics' tent pressure grew into panic, Taylor's team knew the stakes were high. They had to rebuild all the brake lines, electrical components, and hydraulic hoses with the precision of a surgeon working in the dark. There would be no second chances, no do-overs, and every bolt mattered. Outside, the rest of the crew waited, watching the sun creep across the sky, wondering if they had just lost the season. Suddenly, there was a rumble. The sound was low, barely more than a growl, but it grew louder, deeper, and angrier. The A60 roared back to life, seemingly roused from its long nap, 6 hours. It took everything to save the season from certain doom, but was it too late? As the truck resumed its rotation, there was a lack of celebration, only a mixture of cautious optimism and heavy breathing. The wash plant came back online and the conveyor belts started their slow, rhythmic spin. Dirt flowed again, and the heartbeat of the mind returned, but no one dared to celebrate, knowing that in mining, effort doesn't always equal reward. Sometimes, time, money, and sweat all go for nothing. Despite this, I'm glad I could resume trucking, as it means more money for the boys. We're back to hauling as fast as we can, and thanks to Taylor, who is truly a master at what he does, we were able to get it up and running again in just a few days. After what felt like an eternity, the weigh-in finally arrived. All eyes were on the numbers, hoping for a rebound, even if it was only a few good digits. Unfortunately, the gold count was lower than last week. Despite the repair, shutdown, and scramble, it hadn't moved the needle enough to signify that they had officially reached the halfway mark. Despite Parker's best efforts, the cold, harsh reality has only produced 4,175 ounces, just over half of his revised 8,000-ounce goal, and nothing near his original dream of 10,000. They were falling further and further behind, and the numbers had always driven him, but now they haunted him. Due to the impersonal nature of the math, it was leading to a painful conclusion, and barring a dramatic change, this season would not be a legendary comeback, but rather his most costly failure. What's worse is that the ground still contained gold, but they were unable to reach it quickly enough. In the gold fields, the pressure builds up gradually until, one day, it all comes crashing down on Parker Schnabel. The weight is now measured in hours, not ounces, and wash plants and trucks go missing.